All right, what is up, everyone? TCR Live is back. I took last Thursday off. I actually took my family down to Tallahassee, Florida for just a quick overnight stay. So just a little quick family vacation on spring break. And we're back to talk about all of the moves, the endless list.
So many.
There's so much to talk about in terms of the Cardinals free agent moves. We might not get it in on this show, gentlemen. I don't know how, but I think we can try. So we're going to talk about the moves the Cardinals have made, the long laundry list of moves. We're going to talk about what is their plan, and maybe talk about what we think is coming next. So before we get into that, Aarron, how are you, sir?
I'm great. It's the off season, and just it's that time of year where a lot of things are happening in the NFL. I mean, unprecedentedly, and the Cardinals are just sitting there doing their thing. So it's just, I guess, as long as the chaos in the NFL keeps going, then I'm okay with it for a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up. Kyler, how are you doing, dude?
Doing good, my man. Very similar sentiments to Aarron, though. It's probably the wildest movements in the NFL in my memory. And it's really interesting that the Cardinals have done verging on nothing. But whether that is good or bad, I'm sure that we will get to tonight.
Yeah, we'll definitely give our takes on that. And I want to real quick say hey to some of the folks in the chat. We got Nick L here. Appreciate you being here, Nick. We have Carmelo Ramirez. Thank you for being here. Andrew Sigala, thank you for being here. And everyone else who's there watching, thank you for being here tonight. Why don't we get into, we got a lot of moves to get through. So let's start with the guys they brought back, right? And we've been talking about this for a while. I don't think any of the guys they re-signed were a surprise to us. In fact, I think we all were kind of talking about, we figured James Conner would probably be the one they brought back. Yeah. If they were going to let a running back go, we thought it might have been Edmonds. Whether we liked that or not, that's what we thought was going to happen. We kind of, I maybe had a point where I thought maybe they'd bring back Kirk, but I think generally we thought Kirk was going to be overpriced. He walked. We thought there was a good chance they would bring back Ertz. They did. I think we all hope they bring back, Max Williams. We like that tight end room combo. They did. They made some moves to clear up some cap. So, Kyle, let's go and start with you. What are your thoughts on some of the players in terms of the re-signings and also the players, they moved on from for cap reason? What stands out to you?
Well, like I was saying earlier, we might have some inactivity in signing other players, but I really like everyone that we brought back. Like, I think the Cardinals actually did a really good job prioritizing the players to bring back, and they were exactly the ones that I wanted, which isn't saying that that's correct necessarily, but they are who I thought were reasonable to bring back and who I think bring something extra and special to the team. So James Conner, you can't, in my mind, you can't justify letting him walk because of the touchdown production that he had last year. It was just out of this world. It was something Cardinals had not seen from that position in a very long time. So bringing him back, no brainer. I love bringing Zach Ertz back. He had verging on a historic season for a Cardinals tight end. I know we've talked about that before. And the underrated signing along with Zach Ertz was I really, really wanted Max Williams to come back and be paired with Zach Ertz, both healthy and both playing at the same time, because I'm just really interested to see what Kingsbury can do with a two tight end set, because we really didn't run that very much because we just didn't have personnel to do it. Not when you have either Max Williams and Darrell Daniels or Zach Ertz and Darrell Daniels. But now when you have the complementary strengths of Ertz and Williams, who both do a lot of the same things really well, but also do disparate things really, really, really well. I love that. Christian Kirk, I think we had resigned ourselves to that was a player that we were going to be priced out of, but I did not come anywhere close to expecting what he did get. That blew my mind that Kirk got that much money. But
So
it
why
also,
they're the Jaguars.
yeah, but if that's what his free agent talks were like, I can see why the Cardinals probably put an offer on the table of what we're willing to pay you, but we're not going to go above this. And good for him. He got paid a crazy amount of money, and you can never be anything but like happy for guys that do that. So good for you. And Chandler Jones, I also thought we were going to get priced out of. There are other teams just willing to pay more than the Cardinals could afford to keep him around. And then there are some arguments about drops in production with Chandler and all that. But he was the one that I was particularly sad to see go because he was just one of my favorite Cardinals, and I will miss seeing him.
Yeah, for sure. Let me real quick hit on, and Joshua, thank you for being here. He likes the Connor move, and you were just now talking about Chandler, and it was tough to see Chandler Jones go. He's such a great player and was really a great part of the team. And I think what he was going to command in free agency for a player at his age, I was a little uncomfortable with that. And Joshua has a point here. Maybe if they had worked on an extension earlier, and it might have been at a better price too.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have been, a little more tenable. But Aarron, why don't you jump in with your thoughts on the players they brought back? And let me just real quick note. Yeah. And it looks like Robert Alford may very well be coming back. In fact, and I'll just kind of share this real quick. I got this from Twitter. This is the transaction report. A couple folks share this on Twitter, and that he had a visit with the Cardinals today, and obviously they know him. So if they're visiting him, it's probably leaning towards a contract potentially. So Alfred is likely to be a guy they bring back. But Aarron, what are your thoughts on the players that they've brought back and appear to be on the verge of bringing back?
Well, I mean, you can't tell the story of the 2021 Arizona Cardinals without James Conner. Historic production, nearly broke David Johnson's rushing touchdown record, nearly broke Charlie Trippy's total touchdown record, missed it by like 2. And there were some places out there, websites like Bleacher Report and some other ones that said that James Conner was the worst signing in free agency. And
Right.
I have to ask you, what are you drinking and where can I bet at? Because that was a drunk and idiotic statement. So Zach Ertz also coming back. Kyler, you did a great video on basically how historic he truly was. Basically being our Jackie Smith now, and that was
Smith, man.
It was a great video. Go check out Kyler's YouTube channel if you guys.
If you are a younger Cardinals fan and like me, not that I have any room to talk, but go learn more about Jackie Smith because it's awesome.
Him and Jay Novacek, top 2 tight ends in Cardinal history. So I agree with you on that. Kyler, I know how much you love Chandler Jones, but originally when we did it, way before I did anything, I never understood the trade. I mean, we were getting rid of Jonathan Cooper and getting Chandler Jones. Was that a steal? Pretty much basically was, because Cooper never did anything. But I don't remember what year that was. Was it 2016 we did that?
Yes.
Yeah, and I just thought like that's the last thing we need right now with Palmer, and we needed another corner. But it did work out. But remember when we tried to go into talks with Chandler Jones in 2020 about getting an extension, he basically did what Kyler Murray did before Kyler Murray did it. And he got all weird about it. And then he had the one game this year in week 1. We're like, oh crap, now we're going to owe him a lot. Mm-hmm. And, he ended up going to the Raiders. Yeah. So good for him. I'm glad he got money from someone else, but the Cardinals were already in a cap situation. So I was expecting to lose him, and, it sucks losing him in some ways, but in a way it doesn't, because he kind of regressed in the last couple of years. I mean, basically, if you look at 2020, it was just like 2021. Most of his sacks came in one game. I was at the game in Seattle when he had 4 sacks on Russell Wilson in that upset win. So, we'll see how productive he is over there in that uber competitive AFC West. And then, with Robert Alford basically coming back, which I never heard of a free agent who played for the team come back and get a visit. I show that to my brothers. I show that to my brothers, and they're like, what are they going to do? Show him his old locker or something? So, but sadly, he was their most consistent corner last year, and that just goes to show you how much depth we really need. So I guess welcome back, Robert Alford. And the others I'm just blanking on. So TCR, take it away.
Yeah. And I want to, and Andrew's got a couple good questions here. Andrew, we'll talk about the AJ Green thing in a little bit, because there's a lot of people talking about they might bring him back. That's a really good question. And your other question about, and I do with Chase Edmonds, and Anwar has a point here about, I'm fine with everyone they're brought back, but I think Chase should have been a must keep. He averaged 5 yards, 5 yards a carry. I love Chase Edmonds. I think he's a really good player. I loved him in this offense. But one of the things, and you both know probably know what I'm about to say, because I've said this before. When you look at running back skill sets, there are a lot of running backs in the draft who do what Chase Edmonds does. Guys who are good in space, guys good catching the ball, guys that aren't bigger backs, right? There are probably 6 to 8 of those guys in the draft that probably could do the kinds of things Edmonds can do. And he was one of those guys when they drafted him in the 4th round out of Fordham, right? That's why he was a 4th round pick, because that kind of back, that's usually where they go. I love Edmonds, but I think his skill set is easier to replace than Connor's. So I've been saying for a while that if you have to pick one, it's Connor. And from a roster building perspective, it's just not wise to allocate too much money to the running back position, because you can get them in the draft like that, and they do have a shorter shelf life. So, I hear you in terms of, how valuable he was, but those guys are available right in the draft.
Plus, Edmonds had multiple chances to take over the starting role, and he always just kept getting hurt. Yeah. And then when Kenyon Drake came in 2019 and really put the nail in his coffin, at least for his Cardinals tenure, then we knew it was just a matter of time till he was gone.
Yeah. Now, I will say, I'm a believer in a running back by committee. I don't like hanging your hat on one guy, because if that guy gets injured, right, then it's a drop off, or the guys behind him aren't already part of the game plan as much. I like rotating guys and keeping them fresh, having a stable of those guys. So I don't like the idea of Edmonds taking the starting role. I never really wanted him to take a bell cow starting role. I wanted the way they used the two of them last year when they were healthy was perfect. Mix them in, right? And then when one of them got injured, the running back position wasn't a huge drop off for the Cardinals. There were other positions that were a bigger drop off. So, I'm fine with that he never took hold of that. But I'm also like, well, you don't pay a lot of money for that guy in that role, like moving forward. But to kind of, build on what you all said about the other players. Yeah, I like bringing back Ertz. I know people are really, asking about what about our second wide receiver with Kirk going, and are we bringing back AJ Green? And I think what we're looking at is, I do think they plan for Ertz to be a much bigger part of the offense and a big option, and maybe the second option, receiving option. And there are offenses that are built like that. They still need to bring in some guys, but I love the Ertz. I love, obviously, Max Williams, because he's the blocking tight end, but he can receive some. It's a great pair. So yeah, I like the guys they brought back. I do like the idea of bringing back Alford. I know he got banged up, played 13 games last year, which was better than he's played in the other year, but he was their best cornerback when he was healthy.
Yeah.
And, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, right now, if they sign Alford and they don't sign or draft anyone else, their cornerback room right now is the same it was last year, except they added Gladney, right? Mm-hmm. So it's at that cornerback room last year was actually played well. It was when Alford went out with an injury and they got to the point, and Marco Wilson was banged up and they were pulling guys off the street, right? That they were really struggling. So what there's an argument to be made that you've brought back the same cornerback room, added Jeff Gladney, you've got Marco Wilson 1 year under his belt, right? And if you bring back Alfred, it's the same cornerback room plus one more depth. I'd like to see them get another veteran, but I'm good with Alfred.
Well, whatever happened to Bashad Breeland? He never played a game.
Yeah, he didn't work out. So we'll see. I'd still like to see another veteran in there, but I like Alfred. I know the injury problems have been an issue, but they've got some guys for some depth. So,
well, it's hard because of how the way the season ended.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that the first 5 games before those sort of nagging injuries started happening with Marco and Byron Murphy, the cornerback group played very well. Mm-hmm. They were a strength on defense. And it's even hard for me to remember that. But now when I'm thinking about those games, they were playing remarkably well, even Byron. Mm-hmm. And he was getting a lot of heat and traction as this is his breakout year. Like Byron Murphy's turning into a star cornerback, but injury sort of derailed that. So that's a good point. If you just add depth to a room that got exposed because of the lack of depth last year, mm-hmm. then maybe that's not the worst thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. My last thing on this is how much does the cornerback drop off correlate with the defensive line and the pass rush dropping off?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because after J.J. Watt went out after week 7, then when you're getting less stops against the run, and you're getting less pressure up front, that puts more pressure on the secondary, so it exposes more problems. So the whole defense is such like an organically interconnected organism, mm-hmm. that if you have one problem here on the line, you're going to have a problem on the back end too. So it's hard to tell what the actual origin of the problem is.
They are interconnected systems.
Yeah.
You've got the coverage system and you've got the pass rush system. I mean, that's what they are. Now, to this point that Josh was bringing, here's, at the end of the day, if our pass rush isn't good, DBs will have so there, and I've talked about this a little bit before, the analytics community really has looked at this a lot. Like this relationship between pass rush and DBs, right? And and we all know this, but I'm going to kind of really quickly summarize it. If your DBs, your defensive backs can hold the kind of holding coverage, then the pass rush has more time to get to the quarterback. And conversely, if the pass rush can rush the quarterback and make him hurry or make him, rush his throw, then the defensive backs don't have to cover as long. And it's just, these systems work together. I will say though, what I have heard, and I listen to a lot of analytics kinds of folks and podcasts, is that the current thinking in the analytics community is that coverage is more important than pass rush between the two. That you can manufacture pass rush and you can get home with a couple guys, but coverage is harder to find, right? In terms of prioritizing players, you need both. But I do want to push back on one thing that I think one mistake I think a lot of people are making is they're assuming that the exit of Chandler Jones means we don't have a pass rush anymore. We've lost an important player, but Marcus Golden had double-digit sacks and has done that 3 times in his career. J.J. Watt is coming back. Zach Allen has a little bit of pass rush, and they're probably going to add someone. I'm not saying that is an elite pass rush, but we still have a pass rush, and Vance Joseph has shown a history of being able to scheme up pass rush. Is our pass rush worse without Chandler Jones? Yes. Mm-hmm. But we do have, our pass rush is not bottom of the league when you...
No, not anymore.
And Marcus Golden, those 2 guys are good. So I think the idea that we've all of a sudden have no pass rush is a little bit off base there. I want to just get a couple comments and we'll come back to both you guys. And Kyler has to bow out in about 10 minutes. So I want to respect his time. He's got some obligations, but let's just real quick get to a couple comments. We should just stack up on pass rush. Maybe how do we do that? Man, I think they're going to draft someone, but we need to address both lines. Our run defense was terrible. We haven't got any better. Yep. Okay. Agreed. We need pass rush. I definitely agree with the depth approach to this point. If we were to try to bring in bigger money player, I feel like probably need to be an edge player. reliable and healthy pass rush. That was a concern with Chandler, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are the main ones. I know there's Calais Campbell. There's been talk about wanting to bring him back. So anyway, I want to get some of those comments. Thank you all for being here. If I didn't acknowledge one of your comments, so anyway, Aarron, let's let you jump in, and then Kyler, thoughts on anything I just said or any other directions you want to take that.
Building off the comment for Calais from Moore's legacy there. I just remember that being an uglier breakup than it ever had to be. And of course, like your rookie year, you go to the Super Bowl and you lose, which is what Campbell did. We were lucky enough to have him. And I think that it's always for, past this point, it's just going to come down to money. I mean, you don't sign with the Jaguars unless you're getting a bunch of money, which is what he and Christian Kirk did. And so granted, he had some, instant success with the Jaguars right there in 2017. So, but I can't see him coming back here. I would personally love it, but I mean, when he shared the picture of him holding the Jags jersey, man, that was really tough for me to see. So I think he's probably just going to end up probably somewhere in like some sort of AFC contender.
Yeah. I think part of the pass rush that we were talking about, I would think we're going to draft an edge pass rusher of some kind, maybe in the first, who knows, but probably in like the second or third round. But adding a veteran defensive tackle, I think would be really important to shore up the run, but also just to get some of that interior pressure, which helps the outside, helps the linebackers when they stop the run, helps the secondary when you get some interior pressure and make a quarterback uncomfortable in the pocket. I think that just has to be such a priority. Whether or not they do it in the draft, I would rather them get an experienced veteran for that role for next season, because Akeem Hicks, I would love Akeem Hicks. If the money is right, I would love Akeem Hicks. Well, I have talked about Linval Joseph before.
I'll take that.
I think Linval Joseph is an underrated player at that position. He's also going to be a lot cheaper than Akeem Hicks or Calais Campbell. True. But just a big body veteran, kind of like the impact that J.J. Watt had. Really great against the run. It just impacts every successive layer of the defense. So that's what I would like to see. And then go ahead and draft a higher pick at edge or tackle. But I just don't see this combo of Rashard Lawrence and Lucky Fotu. And I actually like Rashard Lawrence quite a lot. And Fotu is okay sometimes. But that's not going to be that interior of the defensive line of the future in any sustainable way.
Sorry, I'm trying to show this. Someone, that, and to that point in that question, these are some of the free agent defensive tackles: Eddie Goldman, Brandon Williams, Dominican Sue, Linval Joseph, Starlu Tulele, Larry Ogunjobi, Nick Williams, Tyler Davidson, Malik Jackson, Sheldon Richardson, Stephen, a handful of guys, Danny Shelton,
Oh my God.
Yeah. So listen, there's a lot of space eaters there, and so there are some names out there. None of those are terribly exciting names, but when you're talking about defensive tackles like that, they aren't typically the sexiest names, but there are guys out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. That makes sense. Geno Atkins. Yeah. So, so there are some guys out there, and, so yeah, it makes sense. So let's real quick. And I know Kyler needs to get out of here real quick. So I want to, there was the question, the thoughts on the rumors of AJ Green being back.
Kyle, you want to take that?
Sure.
I didn't hear that. No, because like mine, I glitched out, or TCR did, so I didn't hear anything.
Sorry, I glitched out, so I just threw that up there. What do we think about with this question? What are your thoughts about the possibility of AJ Green being back?
I don't know, because a lot of the really great wide receiver 2 options are honestly gone at this point in free agency. So who you would be bringing in, it wouldn't be a big name. It'd be more of a budget free agent, which I know you love. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I am trying to think rationally of AJ Green's performance holistically from the entirety of the season. And for quite a lot of the season, he was a good number 2 wide receiver. Problems came up really heavily when he had to, in essence, become the number 1 receiver because DeAndre Hopkins got hurt. And those were some of the worst performances that are still sticking, in our head. And obviously the Green Bay thing. But I try not to base my entire opinion of someone's season or career off one stupid mistake. But that early part of the season, he had good performances. He had multiple 100-yard games. He was steady in the middle of the field, and he had a lot of deep shots from Kyler Murray. So as a sole number 2, and if you can guarantee that DeAndre Hopkins isn't going to get hurt and he's going to have to be the number 1, I don't hate it. I wanted an upgrade at the wide receiver 2 position, definitely, and I would still like one in the draft. But if that's the direction we go, it's not the end of the world. But I think we need an upgrade at that position for the offense.
I hear you loud and clear, Kyler. What if I told you Jarvis Landry is still available? But I would take Jarvis Landry right away, wide receiver 2, someone who's going to be even more dynamic with DeAndre Hopkins than he ever was with OBJ. And also, he's an actual leader. If you go look up Jarvis Landry, Hard Knocks in training camp, that's the person the Arizona Cardinals offense needs, because nobody would be as loud as he is.
And I really like Jarvis Landry, but do you have any concerns about him? The past few years, the majority of his snaps have been out of the slot. He's been a big body slot receiver, and moving to the outside, do you think there are any problems with that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think he was more of an outside receiver in Miami anyways.
He has the frame to play it, and he's done it before.
My thing is, they run so many tight sets all the time. The number of slot receivers in this offense is almost irrelevant, because they were bunching up people, trips, swings, stacking people, which I never understood that. I never played receiver, so if someone could enlighten me on that, please do. So I just think he would be a great fit. You also got, Julio Jones. Injury and stuff like that, but T.Y. Hilton, and even Emmanuel Sanders and Keelan Cole, there's not terrible options out there right now.
I want to get just a quick thought in here, but then Kyler has to go really soon, so I want to respect his time. With the AJ Green thing, I agree with Kyler. I think that every player has a couple bad plays. His came at the worst moment. Oh. And so it's really unfortunate. But the 50-50 balls throughout the season, he made some important plays in games that kept us in the game. Mm-hmm. And his overall numbers were pretty good. Now, I also want to real quick touch on the whole kind of sentiment that I've heard from not just in here, that he didn't rise to the occasion down the stretch, and he didn't when we needed him. He didn't come through. But here, that doesn't resonate with me, and I'll tell you why. There are some players who are meant to be a number 2 option or a number 3 option, and when you have them in their right role, they are very good for your team. When you put them in a role that is not their intended role, they aren't going to be able to live up to that. Yeah. Just because a guy who is supposed to be your number 2 option or number 3 option can't succeed when you expect him to be your number 1 doesn't mean he isn't valuable.
Yeah.
Right. Just like Colt McCoy was our backup quarterback. He succeeded in that role. We needed him for 3 games. He got us 2 of those wins. But I guarantee you that if we had him play in 17 games, we would not have had as many wins.
Yeah.
And so the logic of, when we needed him, he didn't come through, to me just isn't it just doesn't resonate with me, because if you put someone in a role that isn't the right role, they might fail at that role. But if you have them in the right role and they're succeeding in that role, that's valuable. So to me, the problem is he was asked to do things that weren't his role.
It's something that I think we maybe talked about a couple weeks ago on one of these. like Byron Murphy. He's drafted to be your slot cornerback, and he was thrown into a horrible situation his rookie season with Patrick Peterson's suspension. And the whole time since, I've just wondered the what ifs of Byron Murphy. If he had just been drafted and he had gotten an easy start to his NFL career in the position that he was supposed to be, instead of having to move around the outside and into the slot and out again so many different times, we very well could have seen him develop into the star slot cornerback, which is a very valuable position in a lot of these nickel defenses. So, and obviously Hassan Reddick is just the actual case study in taking a pretty talented player, forcing them into the non-natural position, and then getting mad at them for not performing at the level you want them to.
Yeah.
Don't forget Deion Buchanan, but he never did good anyways.
Yeah. And, Chris, I hear you, Chris. In a perfect world, we'd love to have a guy who could step up when needed, but a guy who can step up at that level probably is getting paid more and is a number one somewhere else. But I appreciate your thoughts.
Some of that frustration with AJ Green, though, is he had such a long, really successful career as the number one. Yeah. So it's not like he hasn't played that role before. He was one of the greats for a long period of time. He played fantastically in Cincinnati as the number one. So I get why there is that frustration that why can't you step into that role again when we really needed you to? Yeah. But that's the nature of aging, the nature of the offense. There are so many different things that go into play. I'm not going to beat him up too much for not being the number one wide receiver when he did not sign up to be the number one.
Yeah. Kyle, I know you got to get out of here. So let you have the last word on your way out. And everyone, Kyler's got a YouTube channel that is doing really well. He's put a lot of work into it. There's a link below. Check it out. Subscribe. Follow him on social media. Anything you want to say on your way out?
Yeah, I would really appreciate if you guys check that out. Have that Jeff Gladney video up that I did this weekend. That's doing pretty well, and I'm sure after I leave, you guys are going to start touching on Jeff Gladney and Nick Vigil a little bit. So go check that out after you're done here. Only after you're done here, though, and then I will see you guys next week. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Kyler.
All right. Appreciate see you guys.
All right. So me and the coach, Aarron, are going to talk. So listen. Yeah, he's a low level. He is a low level number two, and here's the thing though, like he's a low level number two, but we've invested in our tight end and we've got a second round pick and slot. So you can't have, it's like, it's not Madden. You can't have all pros at every receiving spot and you have to pick and choose. So I think what they're doing now, they may draft someone to be that future outside receiver. And I'd really like that. I'm actually Chris Olave is a guy I'd love to see. I know he's not the big receiver they like on the outside, but I just could see him as that number two to DeAndre Hopkins. That would be dynamic. So we'll see. But yeah, I know and some people, there's some other folks like Will Fuller out there. I've heard people mention his name, Tajay Sharp. So there are some guys out there. Julio Jones, the injury history concerns me. I love Julio Jones as a player, just the injury, and then Jonathan here likes it if we bring back AJ. I think for me, I wouldn't mind bringing back AJ, but I want them to draft someone. I don't know. What do you think about that, Aarron?
I mean, I would agree with it too. I mean, literally in these first two rounds, as long as it's not a linebacker for the second year in a row now, I think we're all going to be okay with the pick. And that's including myself, who's been hypercritical of Steve Keim for the draft. But as long as you get one of those big names, or even some of like the Christian Watsons
or Alec Pierce.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a weird draft with every other position but quarterback being solid. I mean, we're talking about punters here if you watch the mock draft Mondays. So I think it's that. And like, as much as like I would like to move on from AJ Green, it's not like we have anybody who has A, that much experience, or B, is that much better. We don't know what we have in Rondale Moore. Andy Isabella is a free agent. Yes.
He's on his last year of his rookie deal. They gave him permission to seek a trade.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay. And then, I mean, after that, I mean, I don't know. Is Keyshawn Johnson still running around here?
They cut him and he's somewhere else. So yeah, he didn't make the
Yeah.
team out of training camp last year. So they have Antoine Wesley's the only guy on the roster
Yeah.
that would be the guy.
Yeah. But if you're telling me your wide receiver 3 or like your wide receiver 2 could be Antoine Wesley or Rondale Moore, I'm kind of sweating right there, personally.
I love Rondale Moore, but he hasn't been proven, and he did have a little bit of an injury history in college. So yeah, so some reliability there. Yeah, So I think you're right. I mean, is he an exciting name? No, but I wouldn't mind bringing him back. I would like to see him draft someone. Let's talk about they did re-sign Wesley. Yep, Wesley's they did. So they signed him to they extended a tender to him to like. It's that kind of exclusive rights free agent thing.
Yep.
We should have traded for Tyreek. I actually don't agree. I think it would have been a lot for a guy. I mean, Tyreek's a great player. I'm not a fan
Cap
of
space.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been up for that. But maybe there's other players I might have been more interested in. But I think Kyler needs. For the slot, I don't mind some smaller receivers, but on the outside, I think he needs a little bit bigger.
We need a guy just to be an Anquan Bolden. And not in terms of production, but just somebody who's tough enough to go over the middle and finally complete the missing link in the circle that is Kyler Murray's passing game. Kyler still hasn't really thrown over the middle, despite last year being his best year of doing so. And just when your receiver can take a tough hit or even deliver one over the middle, it does so much for the psychology of the offense.
Yeah. And, Devontae Adams, people are saying that, and Chris saying, so here's the deal. I know the cliche that everyone likes to say to these days is the cap is a myth. The cap isn't a myth. It's just contracts are really flexible. You can work around the cap a lot, but the cap is like, you do have to be mindful of the cap. You cannot ignore it. There are things you can do to kick the can down the road, and there are things, but there is a point where you come up against it. And so you just have to think of you have to look at where and how you're spending. And they've got a lot of money on DeAndre Hopkins. They've put a good bit of money into Ertz, and then Zach Ertz. So you got to, I don't know. I think they need to spend in some other places, but let me get this comment. And he sent Isabella 6th round pick to Miami for Devontae Parker. Miami has too many receivers now. They would be willing to move him since he's maybe. I don't know if they would take that.
I'd like that trade.
Huh?
I would like that trade.
I would if they would, but I think they'd ask for more than a 6th round pick. I don't think Andy Isabella, if they have too many receivers, why are they adding another? And like Miami, all their receivers are small now. Why are they got a bunch of small, fast guys? Why do they want another one who in Andy Isabella? So I hear why you want to go after Parker because they've got so many receivers, but the guys they've added a lot of small ones. So I think teams usually and I've heard this analogy multiple times that the receiver rooms, you want your receiver room to be built like a basketball team. You need a couple of the shorter, faster ones. You need some of the taller, bigger ones who can kind of post up kind of a thing, right? So Miami has now between Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, they've got a bunch of those little guys. I don't think they're trading for another little guy. That's my opinion.
Don't forget about Gesicki and is it Durham Smythe or something? They're tall guys.
Okay. I just don't think they'd be interested in Isabella. And Miami. Maybe I'm wrong.
Off of us, so anything is possible.
Right. I just don't think Isabella has much of a trade value. I just don't think there's much.
Trade him to Seattle.
Yeah, right. There you go. Let's talk about some of the guys, the long list of free agents the Cardinals have brought in. And someone mentioned the linebacker we signed was random. Here we go. That linebacker we signed was random. I actually don't think it's as random as you might think. I think there's a reason, but it did come out of nowhere. Like we didn't. Let me real quick though. I did a poll. Here we go of what people thought of the Nick Vigil trade or signing. And I always like to throw at the end, all is lost, fire everyone, just because, And it seems like most people felt like it's fine. They didn't hate it. Like only 6% of the people said bad move. And then, the people who say, oh, let's fire everyone, those are the people. That's an outlet for the people who are just too angry that they extended Keim and Cliff that they can't think straight, right? So whatever. But only 6% thought it was a really bad signing. A few, 25% thought it was great or good, really good, but 63 like, it's fine, don't hate it, not excited about it, right? And good, it's a good depth signing. Yeah, but he shouldn't start. And that's actually, I would agree with that. What is your take on the Nick Vigil signing, Aaron?
I mean, it's just kind of like you see Carlos news come across and you're kind of like, oh, what's going on? And then you're just kind of like, okay, like, yeah. I didn't know this was a need. And, maybe it's just a depth signing. I don't know. I feel like our linebacker room has like 12 people in it right now. And I have, and they're all like, for the first 5 or 7 of them, they can all still play. And so when you add in another one, I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about it. The only thing I really know about him, because I haven't watched much film, is, and I am being positive here. I'm trying to think this is a good signing, but he's the guy who got spun out of his shoes from Lamar Jackson a couple of years ago. That's my only memory of him.
Yeah, he is the guy who got a pick 6 on Kyler against Minnesota last year. So
that's
there is
true. That's the extreme spectrum.
Yeah. So I did a video on this. So anyone who wants to get a little more of the take, might hear a little more of my take on that. There's an actual video that I did pretty recently on it. And I want to get back to the NFC East, right? We want to own that division.
Do it now.
Year. Right. Yeah. So here's my take on it. I think the signing actually makes a lot of sense if it goes the way I think it's going to go. So when you look at their inside linebackers, right? You've got Simmons and Collins, Tanner Vallejo. They've got Ezekiel Turner, who's more of a special teams guy, but they identify him as an inside linebacker, and Joe Walker. Those are the inside linebackers after they cut Jordan Hicks. Last year, what you saw in terms of a playing rotation is Jordan Hicks was the starting Mike, Simmons was the starting Will, and then they'd move him sometimes into the slot here and there. And then Collins would get some play time here and there, right? And then Collins got injured, banged up a little bit. And then you start to see Tanner Vallejo in there and Joe Walker in there. But Jordan Hicks was the number one guy. Well, they cut Jordan Hicks, let him move on. And I think what they're doing now is Collins is going to move into that starting Mike role, take over the Jordan Hicks role from last year. I think they're going to do with Simmons like they did last year, play him at the will. And I think the idea is for Nick Vigil to step into the role that Collins played last year as that first guy off the bench, that first guy they rotated. I think Vigil is the number 3 inside linebacker. So what they essentially did was they moved Collins into the Hicks role, got rid of Hicks, and moved Vigil into Collins' role from last year. That's what I think is happening. So moving on from Hicks, instead of replacing Hicks with another guy who's going to start in front of Collins, they replace him with a guy who will be depth. That's what I think happened. So if that's really what happens, I like it. Get Collins in there. We've all wanted to see more of him play. They invested a first round pick. We complained that they weren't playing enough. I think this move allows them to play him. That's what I'm hoping. So we'll see though, right?
Right.
I just want to real quick. Someone asked, and I've seen these comments. I think in some of my videos and even a few other places. You think it's possible Vance switches to a 4-3 defense? What do you think, Aaron?
I could see it happening. I'm trying to remember back because you've always got to base it off of your personnel. If J.J. Watt played in the 4-3 with Jadeveon Clowney back in the day, and when him and Clowney were at the peak of their powers, they had like 87 combined sacks or something like that in the years they did. I just don't know if you'd really want to do that because you can run a 3-4 and your linebackers can still rush the passer, and you can make a monster put their hand down in the dirt. Especially with how much Vance likes to blitz, and from my perspective of playing college football is to the extent that I did, going up against an odd front defense is way harder than doing an even. Just because of the numbers. And when you have someone who either has a full gap, so if a guard is uncovered and his first responsibility is a linebacker, then that's changing everything else to whereas, okay, I'm basically covered on both sides here. Here's my 3 tech, here's my 5, and I'm the right guard. Okay, I'm helping out on this first line. I'm not even thinking about that. And this just leads me into my next point. 3-4, you can get a lot more creative just with like how you put your linebackers in your corners everywhere. So your nickel, your dime packages, and especially with how explosive the NFL is getting towards the pass, you're going to need that coverage back there. And there are some times where you just play a zone on a quarterback or on the right offense, and it just shuts everything down. So I'm going to say it's possible, but I kind of like the 3-4 the way it is.
Yeah. And I think the reason people are asking is people are looking at like, okay, does Nick Vigil coming in mean that they're going to go to a 4-3 to play 3 middle linebackers? And I think the answer is no. Defensive coordinators don't change their stripes like that overnight. The defensive coordinators have a system that they've developed over time. They might add new wrinkles to it, but I just don't think they're like all of a sudden switching to a 4-3. And that's why they they brought in Nick Vigil to do that. I think it's just more depth piece. And, when you look at what they run on defense, I know I've talked about this before, they run a 3-4, but a lot of the times they're in that nickel, which if you look at the linebackers and defensive line, it's more like a 4-2 front, right? They have the 2 interior defensive linemen. They put their outside linebackers as defensive ends, really. And then they have the 2 middle linebackers in the slot.
It's like Ken Wisenhunt defense.
I'm sorry?
It's like the Ken Wisenhunt 2-5.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So I don't think they're changing. I really think it is to somehow rotate in depth, and then Teddy's saying, that Simmons will play edge. I've heard some people say that, I actually would think Collins would be more likely an edge player because they played him outside some. And in my video, I even mentioned that as an outside the box possibility that, well, maybe they're moving Collins to outside linebacker permanently. I don't think they're doing that, and I don't want them to do that. But yeah, I think it's and Josh, who just left, he agrees. He thinks it's to let Collins start. What I hope it isn't is that Vigil's going to get a ton of snaps and Collins isn't going to get a lot. So
I'll be fine if Vigil plays, but as I've said before, if I see more Joe Walker, I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah. Let's see a couple things. Asking about over cap, say we have less than 9 million cap space doesn't sound like much to make power. Yeah, and the numbers with every signing they kind of change, and some like we don't know what they paid Vigil yet, so it's hard to know. But the cap room, there's not a ton of cap room. There is some room. They have some places where they could make room, and that's one of the things I'm actually surprised they haven't done something with DJ Humphries' contract yet. I think they're going to. I still think they're going to extend Humphries at some point and structure it in a way that it brings his cap hit down. So they have a little bit of flexibility to make room, but right now there's not a ton of cap space. But they have some places where they can make it. I want to say hey to Otis Driftwood. Thank you for being here, yo. What's up? I try to make sure I acknowledge everyone at least once. I apologize if I've missed anyone, but there was a question that I wanted to throw up there, and I'll let you give the first shot at this. So I know Pete Carroll wouldn't trade him to us within the division, but would you offer a first for DK Metcalf if he could be had? Is he worth a first round pick trade to you?
Absolutely. He is worth going into the red 4 in the cap space. Okay. Anything to get in, to join the Denver Broncos as vulturing the Seahawks roster. Yes. Yeah. He would be perfect.
Real quick, Simmons. No, someone's real quick. There's a couple of people. That there's speculation. There's no one's saying that that's happening coming out of the Cardinals. I don't think that's going to happen, but some folks have speculated that. Sorry, but so you would say yes? Okay, I'm a little torn on this one because there's some freakish talent there. So probably maybe a late first round. I'd be I mean, at the same time, he is a lot more of a straight line long strider. He's not, in fact, like his stop and start isn't great. So I just don't know if he's that 50-50 ball guy. But there's a point where if a guy's that talented, maybe you just say we find a way to make it work. So I'm a little torn on that one. But yeah.
Two things on that. One, he doesn't need to be. Why did you draft Rondale Moore for? There you go. Secondly, oh my gosh, I just had the point too. It's blinking out of my head. Oh, here it is. Look at the numbers he put up in Seattle. That was with a run-first offense and a coach that refused to throw the ball. This is all we do down here. We throw the ball like it's our job. So I think he'd be much more happy. And, to foreshadow Hart's comment, maybe he's a head case because he wants the damn ball, and he should get the dang ball. But Pete Carroll doesn't give a flying whoop.
Yeah. So I think Cattle Dog here saying I think he's talking about Dimikaji as outside. I wouldn't be surprised if Dimikaji gets some reps on the outside, depending on but if they draft someone, maybe not, right? So yeah, I don't know.
I haven't really kept up on him.
So what are your thoughts about the Jeff Gladney signing, the cornerback that they signed? Obviously, and for anyone who doesn't know, he was a first-round pick 2 years ago of the Vikings. There was a legal issue with a domestic violence situation. He was acquitted or was not, so that doesn't mean, and if you understand the law, you understand that doesn't mean he was innocent. It just means they couldn't convict him. I don't know all the details, but right, wrong, or otherwise, the Vikings cut him because of what happened. He became available after his legal kind of situation resolved. And now the Cardinals brought him in, signed him to a 2-year deal. Excuse me. He struggled as a rookie, but rookie cornerback struggle. So what are your thoughts on Jeff Gladney signing?
It's a depth move. It's a low risk move. And as of right now, I mean, you really can't do much worse. I mean, if you see a first round free agent cornerback out there who doesn't have a lot of mileage on him, I mean, why not give him a shot? And we'll see what he does, and hopefully he can be phased into the defense naturally and not just thrown in there from the start. Maybe play a little bit cornerback 3 or 4, just be a guy coming in sub. But I think it's a good signing, and I'm excited to see what he has. I don't know much more about him, but that's what I'd say.
Yeah, he was drafted out of TCU first round, late in the first round. I think it was like 31st overall. I agree. Like, if you can take a flyer on a guy who was a first round pick and you don't have to give up a draft pick to get him.
Yeah.
All you have to give up to get him is the price of his contract, which was a little more than some people thought it would be, but it was not a huge contract. I think it was like something like $3 million a year or something like that. If anyone knows exactly what numbers, feel free to let it in Snow Chat. It wasn't outrageous. It's a 2-year deal. You're getting to take a shot at a guy who had enough talent and potential that someone drafted him in the first round. He played a lot as a rookie. He struggled, got better as the season went on.
I got his contract here.
Okay.
It is a 2-year deal, $4 million that is fully guaranteed. He receives $2 million in a signing bonus, and his salary this year is $1.5 fully guaranteed.
What's the total value of the contract? Do you know? Oh, here we go.
$4 million, I guess.
Well, I think plus the bonus, 6.5 for 2 years. That's probably what so it's $4 million plus a $2 million signing bonus, probably. So yeah, so I was pretty close, like just a little bit after, right? Yeah, bring Butler back. Just kidding. Yeah. You got a guy who's got some potential. He's a young cornerback. he could get a lot better. He was good enough to play. He didn't play always well, but he saw the field, and not all rookie cornerbacks even do that. I like taking a chance on a guy. You basically got a free first round pick. Maybe he worked, so couple of questions, Simon saying you're not happy he was a slot cornerback. Here's the thing. He played both. And so they see him as a guy who can play versatilely outside and inside. And when you look at his size, he does have the size and sufficient speed to be an outside cornerback. Now the play style, I don't know. So they played him a lot in the slot, but that also might just simply be because of who they had on their roster. So I don't mind taking a shot with that. Basically now what you've got two Marco Wilsons to work with, two guys to try to develop, young guys, and see how they work out. And I will say that I think Facundo Morrissey's question leads into a point that I wanted to go with. So I'm glad you asked this. Do you think we're going to pick a cornerback in the first or second round? I actually think that now that we've signed Gladney, in my opinion, takes us out of the likelihood of drafting a cornerback early.
Yeah,
I think,
Sorry, I was going to say no. Continue.
Oh, yeah. So I think I don't think we're going to take a cornerback in the first 2 rounds, because I think the way the Cardinals look at it is essentially like Gladney is our first or second round cornerback now. Like, we have 2 young cornerbacks between Wilson and Gladney that we're trying to develop. And if we're going to add other cornerbacks to the room, we want to add depth. And I wouldn't mind someone like Joe Hayden. He's a veteran, but cornerbacks can play well late into their career. Which is a little surprising because you think of it as such a speed-oriented position, but they play well late into the 30s. So I don't think they're going to draft a cornerback early, in large part because of the Gladney signing. They've now got another young guy to develop, and they don't need to draft yet another one, in my opinion. What do you think? Yeah.
I just think that, yes, cornerback is still a position of need, but there are just other areas that desperately need help, and they're on the trenches.
Yeah.
Someone earlier said run defense was terrible, and it really was. I mean, I'll never forget how embarrassing it was to see Dalvin Cook just shred us up.
Yeah.
And then you're going to need, a centerpiece offensive lineman, because DJ Humphries and Rodney Hudson aren't getting any younger. So if you can grab a decent guard or center within the first 1 or 2 rounds, then it's going to be a lot easier down the road. Cornerback is still there, but even last year when it was such a bigger need than it is now, Keim did not put any attention to it.
And I would add one qualifier to what you said. You said you don't think they need corner. They don't need another young cornerback. Right?
Yeah, that's what a good one. Yeah.
Right. They need a veteran. And if they sign Alfred, you could say maybe that's it. I wouldn't mind if they signed Alfred plus another veteran, but I don't know if they'll have room on the roster because, if they right now they've got Byron Murphy Jr., Marco Wilson, Jeff Gladney. If they bring in Alfred, that's 4. They kept 5 last year, but in the years before that, they kept 4. So the max cornerbacks on the roster to start the season for them is probably 5. So they have Antonio Hamilton. I don't know if he's under contract now, but he's a guy they could bring back. He actually played really well for them. So the cornerback room, if it's Alfred, Gladney, Wilson, Byron Murphy, and Antonio Hamilton, that's your 5, right? So I don't think they're drafting another guy on top of that. If anything, maybe they don't re-sign Hamilton or don't bring Hamilton back and they sign another veteran in addition to Alfred. But I will say, I have a suspicion that the Cardinals cornerback room is going to be Alfred, those 5 guys, Alfred, Murphy, Gladney, Wilson, and Hamilton. We'll see, but I have a feeling that's what it's going to be. I don't know. We're about almost to that 1 hour mark, and we kind of touched on we, believe it or not, we got through all the free agent signings, Aaron. I mean, there were so many of them.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to, and we've got just real quick, bring Pat P for a safety. I just don't think Pat P's coming back. I think there were too many bridges burned in that. We'll see. But and I said this, but I will say this earlier, that cornerback room I just listed, that is That is the cornerback room they had last year, plus Jeff Gladney. I see the comment. I'll get it in there in a second. So like those 5, if those are the 5 they have, that's the same cornerback room we had last year, except we've added Gladney. So that's serviceable. This is interesting, and I actually like this. Will Hernandez from the New York Giants. Was he a first round pick of the Giants?
Was UTEP.
Yeah. So he's a big of a guard, right? He hasn't played great, but
what goes right in New York Giants land nowadays?
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, if we're bringing him, I like it. I think we need a guard, and someone mentioned that earlier, and I think a right guard is one of the bigger positions of need on this roster. Nick, thank you for being here. Appreciate that. Hey, we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Back to the cornerback, maybe around 6 pick like Allen for development. Maybe I think that a guy they take that latest might end up on the practice squad with the numbers game. That's the tough part. But yeah. I mean, so what do you think about this? And you're an offensive lineman, so I'm guessing but what do you think of Will Hernandez? What do you think about that potentially?
I mean, I really liked him in the draft. He's exactly the kind of guy you want on that position. Someone who was a guard himself. You have to be willing to, you're going to travel more than any other lineman on the field, at least offensively. You're going to be pulling. You're going to be trapping. You have to be ready for all kinds of stuff. And I think Will Hernandez is really good at doing that, and he excels at pulling. It doesn't matter, what kind of the technique he uses, and I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of that because that's really outside the scope. But he's good, and he's someone who, with a revamped offensive line and maybe just a better offensive scheme, can actually get downfield. And by downfield, I mean to second level, right, and just pick up a linebacker and get someone like a 6 or 7 yard gain more often instead of 3-4 yard gains that put you into if the Cardinals were incomplete, run 3 yards, and then you got a 3rd and 7, and so if you can just get 1 or 2 more yards out of that, it changes everything. So. I hope that's true. I just learned of that right now. So
if me too.
Him, I would be fired up.
I think I'd like to see us get a guard. I don't mind taking a shot on a guy who was a former first round pick. Maybe it wasn't a great scheme fit. Who knows? There's some talent there. I like it. Yeah. I would be a fan of it as long as the price is right. I don't want to pay a ton for for that position, but I agree. Aarron, we try to keep this to an hour on Thursday nights, so we're technically past that. Anything you want to say to the good folks in the chat before we head out?
I appreciate all you guys tuning in. And then the other thing is, just remember, Steve Keim is, when it comes to the offseason, one of the more cunning minds in the NFL. He still has his first round pick, and we don't know if he's going to swing that for someone big, especially in the way this offseason has gone. I mean, it could be an even bigger trade for when they went for Hopkins. So I don't have any sources. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Steve Keim is better at trading than he is at drafting. So I'd say watch out for it.
Yeah, wouldn't shock me. Absolutely. Well, listen, I want to thank everyone who's been here hanging out. Great questions and comments. We really, this is something I know speak for Aarron when I say we really enjoy hanging out with you guys. And I know Kyler feels the same way. Also, if you be sure, Aarron has a new Twitter address for his sports related stuff in specifically. So if you aren't already following him on Twitter, the link is below. Make sure you get down there, follow him on Twitter. On his new Twitter handle. And then Kyler's Twitter is down there. Kyler's YouTube channel. Definitely check it out. He's doing some good work over there. And if you aren't subscribed to my channel, please do. And follow me on Twitter as well. Also want to pitch the Discord. There's a link to the Discord server down below. There's just good conversation there all week long. We really get into it all week. So if you want to talk Cardinals all week long, there's folks chatting in there. If you've never done Discord before, check it out. It's I wasn't really into Discord, and it's really good. So Facundo, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. That means a lot, and we appreciate you being here. Cal Dog, we talked about this earlier that we think it looks like he may be coming back. So on our way out, what I'd like to do is one last thing is I want to do a shout out for the channel members, the folks who support the channel. So I'm going to put the TCR channel members up so y'all can see them. And I want to thank everyone for the support. And we are going to head out on that note. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you later. Peace.